Dober fantasy players and fantasy football fans. Let's take a look at 5 NFL wide receivers that could be the top fantasy sleepers and beat their Dober projected fantasy point totals in Week 15 of the 2017 NFL regular season. Seeing Kendall Wright with a projected fantasy points total of just 5.5 a week after a 10-reception game seems a bit absurd. The high target total isn't unusual for Wright. He has had at least 8 targets in 3 of his last 6 games. We know that Wright isn't a home run hitter, especially since he hasn't had a catch of more than 22 yards all season. But even if he has half the production that he had last week against Cincinnati, Wright will give you an easy winner on your Week 15 Dober Play Card. No man figures to benefit more from Aaron Rodgers' return than Randall Cobb. Cobb racked up 7.9 Dober fantasy points in last week's win over Cleveland, and he should take on a significantly bigger role this week with Rodgers back under center. Cobb reached double digits in Dober fantasy points in his first 3 games of the season, and he's a good bet to get back there now that Brett Hundley is back on the bench. The Cincinnati Bengals season is as good as over heading into Week 15. With that in mind, Tyler Boyd was on the field for 30 snaps in last week's blowout loss to Chicago. Boyd's snaps are coming at the expense of Brandon LaFell, and that's good news for his production going forward. Boyd doesn't need to pull off any miracles against the Vikings to beat such a low projected fantasy points total, but we suspect he is going to inch near double digits in Dober fantasy points in Week 15. Chris Godwin is quietly emerging as Tampa Bay's 3rd receiving option behind Mike Evans and O.J. Howard. Deshaun Jackson has become a forgotten man, and Godwin has been the beneficiary last week, catching 5 passes for 68 yards. Godwin figures to only need to be on the field for 25 or 30 snaps to beat his projected fantasy points total, and we see no reason why the rookie from Penn State won't continue to get playing time in a season that has effectively been lost in Tampa. The Rams are about to pull out every stop against the Seahawks. Sean McVay has found all sorts of creative ways to get the ball into Tavon Austin's hands this year, and if the tricks are going to come out of the bag, this figures to be the game where Austin busts out. Since the start of October, Austin has 5 games with at least 5 rushing attempts. He has exceeded 2 Dober fantasy points 4 times this season based on rushing alone. We know that Austin isn't going to see a slew of targets, but for a man with this much speed, it can only take one good touch to get the 20 yards necessary to post a win on Dober Play Cards.